Ha! Yes! That is awesome. That is a heck of a load hanging out the front. Holy shoot. So welcome back to the shop, everybody. We've got an amazing build that's about to kick off, something that's been swimming in my head for quite a few months now, and it's time to bring it to reality. All right, those of y'all that watch the channel know that we have about 50 acres of property here, plus another 5 acres, and we're always getting logs, trees. We now have a sawmill, we sell firewood on the side, and we have trails. We've been clearing those out here lately. Problem is, very narrow trails, relatively rough terrain, can be wet, can be sandy, a little bit of hills, and I need ways to get more than a single log out of the woods at a time. And I need to be able to get long logs out that will not fit down our narrow trails, say in the mouth of a tractor grapple. That's where building my own dump trailer comes in, that we can go out and repair roads, put culverts in, haul materials out there, and I'm building it robust enough that we can haul thousands of pounds of logs out. All right, so I just ordered me in a couple of 3,500 pound axles, so we're making a 7,000 pound capacity trailer right here, minus whatever the trailer itself weighs. And then if you look up here on my messy workbench, I've also ordered me in a hydraulic cylinder kit here for dump beds. It's a single cylinder direct push kit, so it's not going to be as fancy as, say, a scissor lift or a front telescopic lift. But look at all the stuff it comes with. Heavy duty hinges, so now I don't have to build those. Heavy duty mounts. I don't even own metal this thick, so there's no way I was gonna cut those out anyways. All the fittings, a compact hydraulic pump. I mean, how cool is that? And I didn't feel like it was that bad of a price. We're gonna save thousands building this ourselves. And then I just got me a metal order in. We're gonna build the frame out of 5-inch C-channel. A lot of the 7,000 pound trailers I see made around here, they use 4-inch. I went ahead and we're gonna robust that up to 5. C-channel is quite affordable as well. And I bought really thick 1/4-inch wall, 2-inch square tubing right here for the kind of main frame. And I should also mention, this is a massive build. I don't know how long it's gonna take me to do this. I'm gonna record hours upon hours worth of content. We recently started another channel called Kelley's Creations. I'm gonna put a link down in the description. If you don't enjoy all this yakking and talking that I'm doing right here and explaining stuff step by step, if you just wanna see the builds, plus you wanna see some bonus footage, I'm gonna be working on just strictly a build video to put over there on that channel. Links in the description, go check it out. Y'all, in the future, all of my crazy builds are probably moving to that channel. This channel was always intended for our homestead, for solar stuff, for building houses, sheds, woodworking, gardening, animals, equipment. I mean, the list goes on and on. We kind of do all that. That's what this channel's for. For the fabrication and crazy creations, that's what I have a spin-off channel for. So eventually we'll be moving everything over there. All right, so time for a little more yappity yap, I guess. See, I've got this hitch welded completely out, and what I didn't show off camera is I went on the inside and welded it all the way out as well. Bunch of inches of weld holding that thing on, should be fine, because even though this is considered a heavy duty like tractor UTV trailer, this is considered light duty in the world of dump trailers. And you remember the cuts I made so I could hand bend this to get the shape that I needed to fit in my hitch? Well, I've done welded these out, ground them smooth, but let's take it a step further. I want to put some gussets in here since I've technically changed, you know, the grain and the strength of the steel. Although we're welded completely back out, you can see I put some little backing plates in here and then welded down into it. I still think I want to put a gusset in here, and we're going to have to bend it and then weld it completely out. And I'm going to make it out of like thick 1/4 inch steel. That'll just really reinforce this area right here since I potentially have changed the strength and structure of it. All right, so in order to do that, I'm jumping in Fusion 360, and I done mapped me out a quick rectangle, 3 5/8 by 6 inches long to fit in there nice and snug. I think I'm going to go put some circles in every corner and trim the lines out, just so I have some corners that I can just kind of easily, continuously weld around. All right, so now we're at a critical step. We've got the subframe somewhat complete. We still have to do a lot of reinforcements in. We're gonna need to fab up a plate and weld in these really big brackets right here. I've got a couple of these, and that's what attaches to the pins on the actual lift cylinder. So I'm really having to think this through right here. This is gonna see a tremendous amount of force, tons of force. So you can see I took 2 C-channels, stitch welded them together, fully welded them out inside the frame, and then we're gonna put a plate on here. Actually, we may just weld straight to this, and I may reinforce this some more with some really thick 1/4 inch angle iron, because we're gonna have a tremendous amount of force pushing into this. The cylinders are gonna be pushing back up into the dump bed to push it out. So potentially tons of force right here, and we can't have this bending. So I'm probably gonna do some diagonal bracing. So the other thing that we have to do, you can see I did not finish welding out down here, only at the bottom. We're about to cut this whole section out. So this kit comes with some extremely heavy duty dump bed brackets right here, but these have to be recessed in the frame. So we're about to build another frame up top right here. That's gonna be the actual dump bed frame. Well, it's got to sit on some sort of pivot down here. That's going to be this. So I've got to get all this paint cleaned off to get this thing welded in, and we need the top of this. We're going to have to notch all this out and then weld that into it, because the top of that plate, we won't flush with the top of this rail right here. So whenever we weld our new frame to it, the dump bed frame, it'll actually pivot off the back, and our bed is actually going to hang off about 1 foot back here. That's pretty standard for dump beds to be past the subframe. Plus they need to be able to pivot down and not actually hit a frame, so they have to stick out because they're going to be dumping to the ground. Plus the further back you overhang it, well, the easier it is on that lift cylinder right there. You get more tonnage, more force to lift up, because, well, the fulcrum is getting further back. All right, y'all, you just seen me pull out my X-Tool metal fab right here. This is not a sponsored video, so we're not going over a whole lot. I made a specific video on this. You may want to watch it. This is a laser welder, cleaner, and cutter. But what you just seen me hook up right here is a wide cleaning wand. It shoots a laser beam about this wide. So instead of trying to go in and, you know, grind all this paint off, which is just a nightmare. It's so difficult removing paint. Wire wheel don't take it off. Your grinding disc junks up with it. Watch what it's about to happen. I'm just gonna zap this paint right off because we gotta weld our new frame to this. And I gotta zap the paint off on both sides so we can weld it in here and here. We've also got another issue. This sticker and nasty paint has, you know, just flaked up and burnt up on me right here whenever I was welding on the inside earlier. Good luck getting this mess off. I don't need to take it off down here, but I'm probably gonna use the laser and go ahead and zap all of this clean as well. We gotta do prep work to clean it before we paint it. All right, here goes nothing. Man, some thick paint they put on there. Let me bump the power up. I got all kinds of settings I can do in here. All right, power's up. Let's check this out. Baby. All right, I know it's loud as can be in here, but thick like industrial paint, it just don't get no cleaner than that, y'all. I'm ready to weld to that bad boy. All right, so I made quick work of the other paint. Let's see how quick we can zap through this paint and stickers. That was way quicker. Yeah, you can definitely tell that other paint is a lot thicker. So y'all, how impressive is that? Not only did it zap the sticker completely off, sticker gone. They took that single layer of paint off and got it down to like perfectly etched metal. Now we can paint this up. I'm gonna use semi-gloss black anyways to paint this whole trailer, but I didn't want flaky, nasty stickers and burnt paint from welding on there. That is stinking awesome. All right, so as you can see, we have the big hinges welded in, and I decided to do a 1/4 inch thick wall 2-inch tube across as an extra stiffener, welded into these since we notched the whole frame itself out. Everything is fully welded in. This is gonna be crazy strong. So I've got the trailer flipped back over. We need to figure out where to put the axles right here. So I've got a tandem axle spring kit that's got the kind of equalizer in the middle, and that's because we're gonna be on uneven ground and I want these to have some independent flex. So I could have did what's called like a walking axle design where both wheels are welded on a single pivot point, but that starts getting a little complicated, and that's truly for off-road, never for on-road. While I don't intend to use this on-road, I want to build this to that capability in case I ever go get it registered as a homemade trailer in the future and decide to tag and register. So we need to figure out where the axles are going to be. Typically on a dump trailer, they're a lot further to the rear. We don't put them center, but there's some things we got to keep in mind, specifically tongue weight. I'm going to be pulling this with a very small compact tractor, so I can't get crazy tongue weight on there, especially when there's a few thousand pounds of logs in this. But there's something else you got to keep in mind. If you move your axles more toward the center, when you go to dump, things can get dangerous. You'll have such little tongue weight, this can literally flip over, especially if it's unhooked. So what you'll see a lot of trailer manufacturers do now is they'll do the 60-40 rule. So let's don't forget, we've still got to build another frame on top of this, and it's going to hang out about a foot past this subframe. So what they say is allow, 60-40, 60% of the bed to be in front of the axles, 40% behind. Some even go 70-30, some go 80-20, putting a tremendous amount of tongue weight up front. But again, that helps when dumping, especially as a heavy load shifts to the rear. I should also mention this is my first time ever building a trailer of any kind, and I made it even more complicated by building a dump trailer of all things. Whatever, we'll figure it out. All right, so you see the type of wheels I'm running right here. It's basically pontoon boat trailer wheels. I was kind of struggling finding something that was low profile. We're gonna be loading this up heavy, thousands of pounds. I don't want it tall, and this is a narrow trailer. I don't want it tippy, so I want to keep it low to the ground. And I wanted a wider tire instead of a narrow trailer tire because, well, we're going over soft ground, potentially muddy ground. And that's another reason I wanted 2 axles instead of a single heavy-duty axle. We're trying to have as much ground contact as we can with short, wide 4 tires. I've really tried to think this through. So instead of going, I could have got ATV tires even wider. The problem is ATV tires are not rated to carry a lot of weight at all. So these are actually highway rated pontoon boat trailer tires. And they have really thick sidewalls. These tires are rated to hold 90 PSI of air, and all 4 of them are just under the max rate weighting of both axles. Close enough that I felt comfortable getting these in. So should I ever decide to register this trailer for highway use, again, I don't think I am. At least we've already got radial tires ready for that. As you can see, we got our tilt deck frame started right here. This is all 1/4-inch wall steel tubing right here, extremely thick and heavy duty. Plus, we're gonna run some runners across right here, like some log supports, but we're gonna weld our sides into that to make it really strong so as logs roll around. We don't just want straight standard sides that are crimped. That's not very strong. And then in between all the runners that go this way, in between them, I am actually gonna double this thickness up with more 2-inch square tubing, so it's gonna be like a 4-inch box steel frame. But because we have this wall here and then a bottom wall going down right here, it's gonna be even stronger than typical box steel frame. And then we're gonna come back and do a lot of supports across in the middle, not only on the subframe, but the tilt deck frame too, to make sure we don't have any twisting or binding. So what I'm working on right here is I did 2 1/4-inch wall 2x2 tubes right here, plus we're gonna be stacking more on top. This is our center support that's gonna be getting tons of force pushed against it. You know, there could be 6,000 or 7,000 pounds of logs or dirt in this bed, so we don't need this bending. So you're gonna see me do a lot of structural support to that, but that's why I stacked 2 side by side, stitch weld them together top and bottom. And now we're putting our cylinder support on right here, the eyelet. I thought I was recording in standard motion and I was in fast forward just a minute ago, but that is a huge, and I mean really thick chunk of steel. So I beveled the top edge because a MIG welder can't burn into steel that thick and this, and I'm about to weld it out. I'm just test fitting, but because I beveled on both sides of this, I'm able to do a filler weld all the way in, and then I'll come back and do 2 or 3 cap welds on the outside. The other thing I did was I put a really thick 3/8 plate in right here, and I reinforced it on the back side, just welded everything into this box frame that I made with 2 C-channels, fully welded out together. And I had to put this in to lower. Your cylinder has to start out at somewhat of an angle, lower than the push point. If I were to weld in up here and have the cylinder pushing straight, we'd literally rip our trailer apart. But starting out with a slight angle, hopefully that's low enough. I don't want to get too low and get caught on stumps and stuff in the trail. But starting out with an angle is going to be your heaviest push point and biggest bind, but it should start lifting the trailer. And then as the trailer goes higher and higher and the angle increases, it'll be even easier on this cylinder. But you've got to make sure one end is dropped lower than the other. All right, so this is pretty exciting. We're getting to a point now to where, as you see, I'm getting ready to power up the hydraulic pump, and I want to actuate this. Before I start putting a deck on or really enclosing this, we need to make sure nothing's binding, that the cylinder works as it should in case we need to cut and lower the mount. So lots of stuff we need to check. So that kit that I bought from Primary Mover come with pretty much everything I needed, including the hoses. However, the hoses are really, really long, which is a good thing for the majority of people installing this kit. I don't want a bunch of excess hose under my trailer to potentially get caught on sticks or anything else. So since I can now make my own hydraulic hoses, we're gonna cut and shorten up their hoses. I happen to have some fittings that I need for the other end, and I'm trying to really clean stuff up here and make sure it's like looking good. You go through all this trouble to build an awesome trailer, you might as well make sure the electrical and the hydraulic hoses and all that is really good as well. All right, so there's a high pressure side and a low pressure side on this pump. High pressure side is going to go to the bottom of the cylinder for the push and lift up. Low pressure side is going to be for this has power down instead of just bleeding back into the tank. Some situations power down's good. Some situations gravity fall maybe even better, but I got what I got. So we're gonna put the hose on here, and you see I actually just ran some electrical conduit fittings down here because I don't have any rubber grommets for this side's hose. So my plan is to run my hoses through here. These have clamps on the back side, and I don't have to worry about my hoses rubbing on sharp metal or being damaged, giving me a problem. I could coil all this extra hose up in here, but look, I've got like 4 feet of extra hose, and we're going right over here to this fitting. So this is the bottom of the cylinder that actually fills up and pushes the rod out. Again, that's going to be my high pressure side. I need to make a hose to go to about there. We'll leave some slack in here because cylinder's going to move some. This should have steel wire all in it, so I'll use my steel cutting saw to cut this off. I could save this other end for some future hoses. All right, since we just cut, there's a little bit of trash and debris in this line. There's not a filter on this hydraulic system, so let's blow this out. Yeah, I did see some stuff fly out of there. All right, here is my new fitting. Get that seated on there. Get the right size die set out, which I've started making so many of these 3/8 hoses here lately. I already know the die that I need. All right, so now that we have the bed functional where it can operate up, I still need to do work underneath, some welding, and I may have to do work in the future, like say work on the hydraulics, run some electrical wiring, who knows. So you don't necessarily want to be underneath a heavy bed, especially when all the steel plates on it, trusting that the hydraulics are going to hold it up. They 100% should, but should something fail and this bed collapse, you don't want to get crushed underneath. So that's where we're going to put in a safety stop, just basically a pole right here. This come with my kit. It's already pre-made. We're gonna have to trim up this 2x2 tubing because I think I'm gonna mount it back here. We're gonna trim it up to where it'll fall in on top of that 2-inch square tubing brace, and then we got to weld this cup in. I'm thinking right in here. We want to make it nice and strong, so we can rotate this up, lower the bed down until the post locks inside of this cup. And then, should something fail with the hydraulics, the bed can't collapse on us because it's not going to crush 2-inch square tubing. Then all you got to do is raise the bed back up. This has kind of a weird latching mechanism in it. We'll unlatch it, fold it back down, and it'll rest underneath the bed, out of sight, out of mind, until we need it. All right, so we just knocked a lot out. Let's talk about it real quick for those of y'all that like hearing about the details, and maybe you might have missed some of the little design features right here. So I've got my lid on. We'll paint this at the end. As you can see, I've already painted my box and the inside, and that's simply because I did not want to have to pull all my electronics, hydraulics back out to paint the end of the road. Now I'm completely done. I'll cover all this up, spray paint the underside of the lid whenever we paint the entire trailer. So as far as the lid goes, you see I put a bend in here and on the edges, kind of gave it some shape. That also adds a tremendous amount of strength. This is like 16 gauge steel, so having that, which is thick for a box, by the way, but having that just at a straight piece would be kind of flimsy, except on the back side where it's welded into hinges. So putting a slight bend in like this gives you a lip for water to run off, gives me somewhere to pick and pull. You know, it's kind of like a built-in handle because it's off of the box, but that little bend adds a tremendous amount of stiffening strength to that lid as well. So what you just seen me put in right here, I'd already thought this far ahead and welded in that tab right there, and that is a 90-pound magnet to hold this in. Because this is an off-road trailer for just use here on the property, I'm not worried about locking handles and all that mess. It's just gonna stay here on the property. So something real quick to go in and out of, don't have to worry about a latch, big 90-pound magnet. I mean, that thing holds hard, y'all. Like, golly, oh. Like wind's not even gonna blow that up if I were to take this on the highway. So the other thing that I did, you can see I put rubber edging all on the outside edge. That'll help this from making contact with metal in extreme flex situations or rough terrain and just making a heck of a lot of rattle. All right, so the last wiring that I wanna do in here is I have decided I wanna add a remote control to this. There's gonna be times in the way I'm designing this to where there will not actually be a back wall right here. And we may lay logs 16 foot long that hang off the back side of the trailer, the front side of the trailer, and then I can't lift up, get in my box, and hit the power button. I could notch this out and have this on the outside, or I could just easily have a remote up at the tractor or whatever I'm towing with. So you can see we have two solenoid valves right here. Basically what these are magnets right here that are energized whenever you press an up or down button. This happens to be the high pressure upside, low pressure downside, and there is a plunger in there that actually pull out and control which way the hydraulic fluids flow. So what we're gonna have to do is connect. It's pretty simple. We got red power, black ground, an orange, which actually is gonna hook up to the solenoid side right here, and then we have a blue and a gray, which is for raise and lower. But I have actually got to get in here and activate what looks like, it's basically just a little relay is all this is. Let me show you how this works. Here is the actual electromagnet that gets turned off and on with the power in here. Literally, it's just got power and ground in there. And again, it activates a plunger that's inside of here with that magnetic force. So all I'm going to do is just run a wire up into here for the power upside, connect it right where that blue wire is. There's a little screw. We'll take this plastic cover off there. Now you can see the screw. And do the same thing over here. All right, here goes nothing. That's gonna be awesome. Oh yeah, I don't even have to get off the tractor to dump. Going about my business. That's really about as high as I need it to dump anyways, but look at how much angle I can get on this dump trailer, more than I've seen on most others. Wow, yeah, there's no way dirt or rock's gonna stay stuck inside. All right, let's try it down. All right, I think everything I just did is self-explanatory, but as you can see, I welded in some thick 1/4-inch gussets underneath right here. This is already, relatively thick wall square tubing. We're gonna have 3/16 plate coming here to here. So, it's gonna be heavily supported. I don't foresee these ever bending. And you're about to see I'm gonna weld in some angle iron all the way down. That way when I lay my sheet in here and then bring my other sheet down for the sidewall, I can weld through, and if I burn through the backside, doesn't matter, because we have nice thick angle iron, and that's just gonna add strength too. And then these right here are basically just the tilt deck guides right here. So as you can see, nothing supports the front side of the frame. The only support shifting this way is back here on your hinges. Now these are extremely robust hinges, way more robust than I need for a trailer this size. So there really is no flex left or right in this trailer. You're moving the whole trailer. This top tilt portion does not move, but should I ever get in a bind or bend it somehow, now whenever you lower it down, it'll hit these really thick 1/4-inch plates and line itself up back on top of the frame. Holy smokes, y'all. I just spent hours welding this out. Huh. So you can see the way I put two sheets together. That's so I could utilize a full 8-foot sheet. Got 17-inch walls, 62.5-inch centers. I forget, another 17 inches right here with no waste left over. But that left me a seam in the middle, and then obviously seams down the side like a normal dump trailer. Well, I don't like when I see dump trailer manufacturers do a little bit of stitch welding on the inside. This is where all your wet, dirt, water, and other nastiness is. And then that just allows the water and stuff to run underneath unpainted steel and just rust your trailer out. It doesn't last as long. So I just did 8-foot long welds there, welded out an 8-foot long center, and then a tremendous amount of stitch welding all up underneath. See all these little spots, all stitch weld. This thing is unbelievably solid. I went ahead and did 3/16 walls, 3/16 floor, which is about 7-gauge material. Crazy thick for a dump trailer like this. But yes, it's going to take away from some of my lifting capacity. But my thoughts are is I'm putting gigantic 2,000 or 3,000 pound logs in here that'll have knots and limbs sticking out on them. I don't want to be bending and bowing this up right off the rip. This thing's going to take some abuse. Let's see if the hydraulics hesitate any now that we just added a pile of weight to this. Let's hope not, because we still got to put thousands of pounds of material in this. Nah, that shot right up. All right, you can see all the stitch welding underneath, all down the sides. I kid y'all not, I've done put over 20 pounds of welding wire on this trailer thus far. Normally it takes me a couple of months, a few months to go through one 10-pound spool. Well, I'm now on my third 10-pound spool for this project alone. I had to rush in some more wire. I had no idea. When this is all said and done, I may have 30 pounds of wire just on this trailer, just in the welds. Holy smokes. All right, so I've got a vision here. Yeah, I don't know why I'm making it so complicated, but I am. So I want this rear door right here not to be the traditional double fold out style and go on either side like most dump trailers. I want a solid door because I want this door to act as a ramp. I'm going to be constantly carrying this out in the woods, say with the tractor, and I want to have my golf cart in here so I can run back and get the excavator with the log grapple, run back for lunch. You know, I'm just constantly needing a quick way back and forth to the house. That's why I built this as wide as I did. And I want this rear tailgate to fold down, serve as a ramp. Rear fold down tailgate's not going to be long enough, so we're going to have additional ramps. And I'm still playing with building them into the tailgate or mounting some on the side. We're about to figure that out. But that also means that this rear tailgate, while I don't want to make it crazy thick and heavy, doesn't need to be out of 3/16. It's got to have a thick enough frame and some supports and strategic spots to handle driving stuff in and out of here. So the tailgate needs to pivot this way and pivot this way. I have to do dual pivot here, and I won't build in ramps on it. Oh goodness. All right, we got a lot going on here. Let's quickly explain and get back to work. So as you can see, I've got some heavy duty hinges here that I am going to set up to where I can actually pull the pin on them. So if I want to fold down this way, but right now they will allow the door to swing back around. Yeah, they kind of stick out, but I need them to, so when the door swings back around, it actually tucks into here. And then we're going to have to put a latch down there to latch the door closed. We'll just use the same latch here, so we'll just have to put a bracket down there. So as you can see, I've got some of these heavy-duty spring-loaded latches. That'll be fine, one up top. But we've got to come up with a hinge, and it's got to be a hinge that I can pull a pin out of, and I need it supported mainly in these two areas to where I will be driving in, would say a cart or something else. That's where we'll be putting the majority of force on the trailer. So I'm going to custom build my own hinge, again, so we can pull pins here, fold down, or pull pins down here and swing around. I am just going to use some thick wall steel tubing, put a piece of solid bar round stock in there and just make me some pins, drill a hole through it with a little pin that we can pull out, a little cotter pin, something like that, and then you can pull the hinge pin itself completely out either direction, and you can put it back in if you want to. So if I'm out working today and just want the door swung around, we've got that option. All right, let me show you my creation here and let's see how well it works out. So you can see I got some T-handles welded on the pins for these two latches right here, so I can pull them up and put them right back in. And I've got some little clips on the bottom, some keeper pins, keep those from popping out. Now that you take out if you want to fold down with the hinges that I just custom made right here. So if you look underneath, I know the lighting's not good. I've still got to finish welding these out, but I've got a center pin right here welded to the frame that's going to tilt, and then these two pins right here are welded to the actual trailer frame. So I've got real thick 1/2-inch rod that goes through here. No way I'm going to bend that pulling the golf cart in. Take these clips right out. This doesn't fall out going down the trail, and these pull out no problem. So let's go ahead and test this out. Pull this one out, and we can put these right back in and pin them in, so it's not like I got to find a storage spot for those. And then we'll lift up on this. All right, door swings open nice. Those are some pretty thick hinges too, by the way. And then we can swing it all the way around and latch it to the side of the trailer. So now we can come back over here if we want. Put our pins back in the bottom. Pull these clips out right here. Pull that pin out. Pull that pin out. That one come out real easy. I'm gonna grease that top one up. All right, I may have to do some grinding and all, but let's see if this will actually fold down. Undo the latch. Yep, just need to grind this hinge a little, but as you can see, it folds down now. Now we need to put some center supports in here. We're gonna need to sheet the backside and We need to do some chains to actually hold it and support this, because just resting on a hinge is not the way we want to drive into this thing. All right, it's taken quite a while to build this, but let's test it out and see if my little theory in mind works for all the different angles that I have built in here. All right, so as y'all can see, I welded in some hooks. I've got some really heavy duty chain here to support all the weight. I can also lower this down quite a bit more. All right, so now we got 5,000 pound chains on either side. That's not going anywhere. 1/2 inch rod, custom made hinges up here. We're not gonna bend that with a golf cart. Now we've got our flip down ramp. And what y'all didn't see off camera, these 19-inch hinges I put in, I welded out fully on the inside, underside, welded out like crazy. Now, as you can see, this isn't going to the ground. The whole point of this is to flip out, and I know I'm gonna have to tilt this a little. The golf cart will drive in no problem. And because I've got the remote and I got a power down feature, as I get the golf cart in, I can just go ahead and start dropping the trailer and we're good to go. time for proof of concept. We have this thing welded up, and I want to try it out. So we'll do some tests. We'll haul a heavy load of dirt. I'm about to put some massive logs in here to test my open-ended design, plus something that y'all see me weld in, but I didn't tell you what I was doing. You see these hooks here and here, as well as I got hooks in the rear that serve dual purposes. What I'm about to explain to you, and holding the tailgate up whenever I decide to use the tailgate. So I'm going to stick logs in this trailer. The reason I did a front door and a rear door is because I want this to be hollow U-shaped like a log truck trailer. I want logs to be able to hang out the front here whenever I want to bring a really long, say straight sawmill log out of the woods. Anything I'm going to cut up for firewood, I'll just cut 8-foot logs or 10-foot, let them hang out the back, or just cut 6, 7, 8 footers and just stack right in here and leave both doors on. It doesn't matter. Open one up whenever I want to dump. But when I find that perfect sawmill log out there in the woods, I may want to bring up to a 16-footer out. So I left room to where a log can hang all the way up to here a few feet and hang several feet out the back, say, if I want to bring a 16-footer up. But therein lies a problem. Say you've got a massive log that weighs 2,000 or 3,000 pounds. You can't just stick it in the middle. It's probably the only log I bring out and just take off. It'll be rolling side to side, smacking the sides, could potentially tip the trailer, especially on inclines and uneven ground, going over roots, and you could just damage your trailer in general. So what these hooks are for, I'm gonna grab some 20-foot chains, and I can hook a chain in here. Say I've got a big log in here that's sticking out the back. I can loop the chain all the way around the log once, go back and hook over there. Basically choking the log. I can do this front and rear, so if it tries to roll one way or another on the uneven trail, well, it absolutely can't do that. We're gonna test that right here. Then we need to test the fold down tailgate and ramp, see if I can put my golf cart in here. Then, well, this box will hold a few thousand pounds of dirt. I'm constantly going to be rebuilding my trail out there, putting in culverts, building up low areas. So let's haul a load of dirt out there. That'll all be some really good tests. I want to look at the axles, I want to look at the tires. So I'll be going after sawmill logs like this. Actually, these are so heavy that my excavator doesn't even really like lifting them, especially that one. And my tractor, the last time I brought that log out of the woods, it couldn't even lift that more than a foot or two off the ground. So that log right there is like over 2,000 pounds the last time I did the log weight calculator. But stuff like this, man, beautiful logs. I'd love to bring those out. The trailer's ready to carry far more weight than that. I could easily carry all this that you see right here, supposedly, and be close to maxing the trailer out. All right, so we're wanting to leave these hinges in. We'll remove the bottom hinges so we can swing the door around. I could completely remove the door if I want, but there's no point. I made it to where it can swing to the side. But if I ever decide to take the door completely off, I have that option as well. All right, so bottom hinge pins are out. Let's unlock that. Swing this bad boy around and latch it to the side. And we need to put our pins back in so we don't lose them. All right, y'all seen that I just welded me in a big carrier up front, and I can put chains, straps, an axe, a chainsaw, fuel, anything else I need to carry up here. It was wasted space, and I knew I wanted some carrying space anyways. All right, so whenever it comes to this front door, you're gonna notice, hits the jack. That's very easily remedied by raising the trailer up, lowering it down, and just go right over the jack. I almost built a hinged front door, but just a waste of fabrication time and hinges whenever I can just lift it right up. All right, then this door swings and latches right here, and I've got everything with a nice tight fit too. That may bite me down the road, but I didn't want to hear a whole bunch of racket going through the woods. So overall, with both doors swung out, we're just a tad over 6 foot wide, which is the exact width of that tractor, exact width of my excavator. So I built this to be the same width of all the biggest equipment I'm gonna run down my trail, so I don't have to go widening out my trails anymore just for a trailer. All right, the real test. Let's put a little less than 2,000 pound sawmill log in there. We'll go close to center, maybe a little slight more to the rear since I've already got tongue weight built into this trailer. And I'm gonna put the butt into the rear as well. So check that out. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and put the butt in. We'll 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 p I mean, yeah, I could put several in there. Here's the beautiful thing I'm seeing. Not even the slightest pooch in any of the tires. These things, they're heavy duty rated now. Not much flex in the springs. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have a problem maxing this out, say 5,000 or 6,000 pounds in it. But I want to test the theory of a single log. See how easy that is to roll around. If I were to take off and go down the trail, we would have major problems. This would be banging from side to side. So let me test out my little chain theory. All right, these are pretty short chains that I use for towing. My gut feeling is I'm gonna have to order in some 30 footers, which I plan on doing, so I can do 2 wraps around the log, because I think it's gonna slip. Yeah, I can already tell it will with a single wrap. So let's test the 2 wrap theory. All right, that's definitely already tighter. Okay, definitely gonna do 2 wraps for sure. Do that front and rear. This bad boy ain't going anywhere. You know what? If I can lift that 2,000 pound log up, I'm gonna put it in here, and I'm gonna grab that other several 100 pound piece. So we're gonna have for sure over 4,000 pounds in here. Then let's see if this thing will even dump. Yeah, I can barely get it to the side, so this is definitely it. All right, I'm gonna add a little more to the front for some towing weight. Holy shoot. Blew out a hydraulic hose, caught it on camera. That would be a first for me. Holy smokes. Yeah, that's all the tractor wanted, y'all. My, oh my. Blew out a hydraulic line. Of course, that's got to happen and blow hydraulic fluid everywhere right before I'm getting ready to paint. Oh boy. Yep, that's the first out of all the years I've been operating equipment. I've never had a line blow out like that. We won't spend too much time on this, but that hose right there blew out right at the fitting. That's a factory fitting too. These are some specialized fittings, but that's a pretty small hose. Guess I'll be going to town tomorrow to buy those fittings. Luckily I got me a hydraulic. Yep, there it is. Can y'all see where it split and blew out right there? Goodness gracious. Luckily I got me a hydraulic press now, and golly, there's hydraulic oil everywhere. Okay, let's check it out. Goodness, there still isn't no pooch in the tires. Springs are definitely compressed a little more this time, but not bad. I cannot get over absolutely no pooch in them tires. Okay, springs, cheap. I mean, they're cheap springs I use. They're starting to straighten out a little. I've still got more room in here. I was gonna go put that other log in here, but thanks to that blowout, that's not happening. Well, we better pray this dumps, being that I can't pick those up and pull them out, and I wanted to continue this test. The other thing too is, you notice now I can't get in my box. That's why I want to do the wireless remote. So when I do haul long logs like this, if I don't remember to pull my wired remote out, as long as I got this in my pocket, we're good to go. Now here is a real test. I don't know if it's going to lift this load or not, especially with so much hanging this way right here. If it does, I'll be highly impressed. Ha ha! Yes! That is awesome. That is a heck of a load hanging out the front. Boom, baby. Oh, yes. Y'all couldn't ask for no better than that. I didn't think it would lift that. I almost went with a bigger cylinder, but I decided to save several $100s and go this one, and I'm glad I did. That is awesome. Now all we should have to do is just pull forward, and I'll deal with these logs later. Baby, I love it when a plan comes together. Huge log slid right out, nothing's bowed, nothing's bent. Just what I expected. I mean, 3/16 steel floor, come on. This thing is so heavy duty. Super happy with the hydraulics lifting that. That is fantastic. fantastic. Okay, if we can lift those logs, we can definitely go get all the logs I've got out in the woods for firewood and for sawmill poles and sawmill logs, things like that. We're gonna do that in another episode. This one's already going way too long. Now, dirt. A heavy load of dirt in here. Will it lift? I don't know. Plus, I'm gonna put the bucket on this tractor. I don't wanna have to always rely on two different machines, but there's lots of times when I'm working in the woods, I am. This can be the hauling tractor, and I can have the excavator out of the grapple, you know, at a log pile that I've built, just loading this up, me running back and forth. So we need to test loading the golf cart up in here so I can run back and forth and get other equipment. And we need to test loading a bunch of dirt up in here. And we need to go out on the trails over some rough terrain with a load in it and kind of see what that looks like. I guess let's test the golf cart theory out, because I built this to haul a golf cart as well. All right, so the plan is we're gonna wanna lift it up a little. We want that to make contact with the ground, which it will. And this will only be when I'm working all day in the woods, or I have to carry multiple pieces of equipment out there. And I know some of you are probably thinking, hey, why don't you have stabilizer jacks on the rear? I just don't think I'm gonna need them for this super light cart right here. All right, a little bit of spinach, but that worked just fine. All right, so this is gonna be used so many different ways behind so many pieces of equipment, but this is gonna be a very popular way I use it. This little tractor for this little trailer. Now, when I'm going out getting massive logs, we'll have to use the John Deere because it's got, you know, way higher lift capacity than this. But for all my small firewood poles, moving dirt, everything else, this is gonna be the perfect setup. And this is why I did a little bit heavier duty jack instead of one that'll tilt out of my way for the door, because I'm about to drop this off. No point in grabbing another piece of equipment, run up here to my dirt pile, get me a bunch of scoops, put it in the trailer, and I want a jack that can start handling a ton of weight right here. All right, that is a big load of dirt for a little old trailer. Once again, tires look fantastic. Springs look good. I'm loaded all the way up to the front, actually against the door. Yeah, we could easily get maybe 1-2 more scoops max in there, but I was already concerned about getting too much tongue weight on the rear of this little tractor and not lifting. It lifted great, by the way. And I have no idea if we're gonna be able to lift this up. All right, so great initial first test. I think we're gonna carry this video on even longer. Hopefully you're enjoying the longer videos. I get requests for them all the time. I've run into a little issue. So first and foremost, yes, this actually lifted a dump trailer full of dirt, which is a tremendous amount of weight, probably the heaviest load I'll have. I could tell it was struggling. That was about max, but it actually did it. I just don't think I'm gonna have any heavier of a load in there than that. So I obviously sized my cylinder and pump correctly, and I didn't spend hundreds more on a bigger system that doesn't look like I need for a trailer this size. But because we had so much lifting force on that last push, I looked everything over and I found a problem. I'm gonna share my problems with you. I'm just a guy who taught himself how to weld. I'm no master fabricator, and this is my first trailer ever. I didn't expect it to be perfect, but thus far I'm very pleased. But let me show you the issue. We better fix it quick because it could become a major issue. All right, so I knew we was putting a tremendous amount of stress on this big reinforced double C-channel frame right here, and I put braces in. However, yeah, we did put a ton of pressure. Everything up here looks good, nothing looks bent, but I found something that's already failing. Look right here. That's 3/8 steel, and it's bowing in. Yep, that's a problem. Plus this huge C-channel weld together box frame I got right here. You're not gonna be able to tell on camera, but I can tell there is about a 1/16 to maybe an 1/8 of an inch bend in it. That lets you know how much pressure that cylinder is pushing back here when it was trying to lift that heavy dirt load. This may not be something the average person would notice. I see it, I don't like it. I wanna reinforce this even more. Plus, I need to figure out how to bend this steel out. And then you can see the failure point right there. We're gonna weld in a reinforcement dead center inside of that C-channel because the C-channel looks perfect. And you know, probably do some 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch steel, thickest stuff I can find in the shop, so that can't push in again, but I gotta figure out how to pull that out. I guess we're gonna use chains and ratcheting binders to put tons of force, pull that out after I disconnect the cylinder right here. I think I'm gonna cut this out. I put this here in case this frame were to ever bow down, which I don't think it will, and it make contact. Cut that out right there. I think we're gonna weld in some no more 2-inch square tubing across here, which just adds 2 more inches of reinforcement to this. We'll weld it into these braces. I can't put reinforcements across right here because the cylinder has to lay down inside of the C-channel trailer frame. So what I did was these 45 tubular, basically gussets right here. But you got to understand, when force pushes back here and this actually bows like this, you know what's happening. These are working as intended, but that C-channel frame is actually pinching in. But I cannot do reinforcement across because of the cylinder. What I can do is some bigger gussets, a couple, maybe even 2 stacked 2-inch square tubes out to here, which will really reinforce this. All right, let's take a peek in here. If we bend this, oh my goodness, we have done some damage, y'all. So you just seen the final scene there. I ain't crawling underneath where I boxed in that C-channel to where the mount for the cylinder pushes in. Well, that's all 1/4 inch steel, fully welded and boxed in. That should never bend again. Not only do we have double C-channel, 5-inch box frame right there, I added 4 more inches fully welded out of 2-inch square tubing. There's no way. I mean, what are we talking? 8 inches thick of boxed in steel here. This little cylinder is not gonna bend that. But just in case for some reason this bends, pulls on these braces and tries to pull the sides in, I went ahead and run 2-inch square tubing down either side and welded it into that brace back there to stiffen up the C-channel. Oh my goodness. Now this thing is unbelievably overbuilt. I feel confident to go ahead and get out here in the dark, wash it, let it dry all night, and then we'll get it painted up tomorrow. What? All right, it's hot. Hi, yowza. All right, everybody, this was by far my longest episode ever. Longest to make, probably longest video, although I still haven't edited this yet. And please keep in mind, I have days upon days worth of footage, hundreds of video clips, hours and hours worth of footage. It's not all in this video. I typically try not to make these massive type videos on this particular channel. If you want to go see the full length video with all the bonus footage, straight working, every little detail, well, head over to the Kelley's Creations, our other channel. It may not be over there just yet if you're watching this first day, because it's probably going to take me a day to 2 days just to edit that video, and I'll get it right out as soon as possible. Hopefully you enjoyed this build. I sure had a blast making it, and I got to use all these cool tools that I've been slowly purchasing and or collecting in the shop right there. Now I have an extremely useful trailer here that we can use around the property. Looks like it's going to work out fantastic for going out in the woods for the rest of my life, bringing in those firewood poles, bringing in those sawmill logs, and we've got some really fun episodes coming up where we're going to be building up low spots, rough spots, again putting in culverts, getting ready for whenever the rain decides to return and flood out parts of my trails. This is going to be a huge helping hand in going out there and making sure those trails stay very well maintained. Many videos coming up very soon of us putting this in action and scratching up this brand new beautiful trailer. We might as well put it to work.